Hello and well met. This is Laren with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today I'm going to be going over how you can create your own custom tools to build content for your favorite virtual tabletop. In this case, we're using the Fantasy Grounds virtual tabletop platform. My name is Laren. I am the community founder for the Fantasy Grounds Academy. We are not an officially licensed or officially affiliated employees or anything of SmiteWorks or Fantasy Grounds, and the content I'm making is strictly for educational, informational purposes, and it's not part of the official Wizards of the Coast intellectual property or anything like that, although we are going to be using some of the content to input Unearthed Arcana materials. So occasionally throughout the course of a couple years, you'll notice that Wizards of the Coast puts out Unearthed Arcana. Quite often, some of those do or do not get included into the official content later on. So it's more or less a play test where you can check things out, see if it works. And SmiteWorks does a pretty good job trying to keep up with those. However, occasionally those things go away after a new Unearthed Arcana is activated or updated. So for instance, if you had one set of Unearthed Arcana, maybe a few months later, there'll be another one released, and that will kind of go away. I don't know if it accumulates. I don't remember. But I do know that you can kind of do it yourself, kind of manage how you want to keep that stuff and use like Chat GPT to format it and to keep it in your archives, essentially. So what I've done first with Chat GPT is I'm going to create an instruction set for the project. So this is going to help direct the focus and how ChatGPT is to address the conversations that you are going to have in your project file. So I put something like, I create custom D&D 5e 2024 Ruleset subclasses for use in the Fantasy Grounds virtual tabletop. I follow the SRD 5.2 as a baseline, but regularly design homebrew content with unique mechanics, scaling, and lore. I prioritize balance, theme-first design, clean formatting, and compatibility with the automated systems like Fantasy Grounds. I use plain text formatting, no markdown or code blocks. So it'll do that occasionally. It'll give you this weird like HTML stuff. So content can be directly copied or imported. I prefer output that mirrors official subclass structure, featuring entries at levels 3, 6, 10, 14, 18, or when appropriate, that sort of thing. Mechanics must be clearly written and include usage limits, recovery type, and progression. If spellcasting is involved, clarify the spell list, casting stat, known and prepared rules, all that sort of thing. You use SRD-based spell names unless homebrew spells are included. Use concise language and always tie features to flavor and context. I may upload templates or files that should take precedence over defaults. If prior content is referenced, integrate it for consistency. I often work with custom species, factions, and environments. Consistency, clarity, and adherence to the 2024 5e format are essential. So that's the structured instruction set that I'm going to give this for custom instructions. So I'm going to go to Fantasy Grounds, these projects here, which are just it's a folder project. I'm going to click on New Project. And what I'm going to call this is 2024 5e subclasses. And that's all this tool is going to be for. And that way it can stay focused, doesn't go too far off into the different directions. And also it helps keep it more focused and you don't run out of conversation iterations. You know, like when you keep asking it over and over, eventually it kind of runs out of memory. And sometimes if you don't have a paid account, it'll run out of your uses. So you may not be able to do some of this unless you have a paid account, at least the Plus account. I don't have the Pro account. I can't afford $200 a month, but the Plus account does pretty good. I think it's around $20 a month. So 2024 5e subclasses is the name of the project. So I'm going to click on Create Project, and that's going to create a new set of parameters essentially for this. So there's a spot in here where you can add files and add instructions. So initially, I'm going to add the instructions that I just made earlier. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Let's see something here. So Fantasy Grounds. Oops. Here we go. Let's grab this. So here's the text that I want. Going back to the subclasses, this is basically the instruction set or the custom project. So I'm going to go ahead and paste the instructions in here and hit save. So that's going to give it a base idea of what this project is about. And now for files. So depending on what you have access to are going to be what your basis is going to be for a lot of your content. So I'm going to go to the 2025 UA. And I'm going to search for that. So Forgotten Realms Subclasses, that's one of the UAs. So this one came out in January. So you could pull that one and download this. And we'll add this as one of the subclass things that we might want to input into Fantasy Grounds. And now there's a new horror-based one. So I want to say plus horror. And then here's the horror subclasses. So we can click on that link. And here's what that is. So we're going to download that. And these are going to be our tools that we're going to use for creating content. I don't want to give it too much, but if you don't give it enough information or enough examples, it's going to be difficult for it to figure out what your output is going to be. So hopefully you're going to have something that's like this that's going to give you the type of formatting you want for each one of your subclasses. Then when you go to enter them into Fantasy Grounds, it's a hell of a lot easier than trying to reinvent the wheel. So we're going to go with the 2025 Creative Commons 5.2 SRD. So we're going to upload that, even though I've already done that before. I'm just going to upload this to the project file. And here's the 5.2.1 system reference. So I'm kind of showing you how to put together the tool. So here's the Creative Commons. It was available May 1st, 2024. So go ahead and download that. And it's a pretty beefy one, but since it doesn't have a lot of, it doesn't have any images, to be honest. And most of it's just monsters. So it's really not a big, huge file. I don't remember what the limitation on file size is, but you don't want to try to upload a 1 gig PDF. It's probably not going to accept that. So add documents, code files, images, and more for the so that you can add subclasses. So what I'm going to do is take this and I'm going to add in any documents that I think is necessary for this. So we have the, let's see, we're going to go to downloads, go to documents, date modified. Yep. So it's going to be, I always do this. I get lost as to where everything went when I downloaded it, because it can go just about anywhere it wants. So we want to sort by date. Okay. Yeah, so I think I'm going to do it this way. I don't like doing it through the file tree, so I'm going to take and go to my documents folder on my hard drive and just drag them over. So you can do it that way too, instead of clicking add files, because that can cause issues too. So in other words, you won't have as successful of a time as just knowing where everything is. So let's see. Where is everything? That's the problem here. So sorry about that. That's just something I go through every time. Like, where did the stuff go? Sort by, I mean, it goes in my downloads folder, but it doesn't always go to the same folder, which drives me bananas. I do have a specific folder for it, but it just drives me nuts. Let's see. Let me go to this. There we go. Okay. So it did go here, but it's not sorted yet. That's why it's doing this. Okay, so I'm going to sort it by type, or group it by type. And here we go. So I'm going to take the documents that I got today and split them into the project file. So that's basically what I'm doing. So I'm fumbling right now because, oh boy. This is kind of embarrassing, but it is a thing. I know everyone goes through this, but it's one of those things where organization is a big deal, but I'm going to kind of show you the struggles of it too, the reality of it. Because if everything's perfect, then when you go to do it and it takes a lot more work, you're not going to be surprised. You're going to be like, okay, now I know why he was struggling with this stuff. It is just a matter of being organized and that sort of thing. But why is it? Okay, here we go. So here are the subclasses. So I'm taking the UA articles that I downloaded and taking the SRD and placing that in there. So that really technically should be all that I need for files. So that will give it a pretty good idea of the structure that you'll want to make. Now in the Fantasy Grounds part of this, I have create campaign. I gave it a title 5e underscore 2024 D&D underscore UA underscore work. So I know that this is a work file, and I'll be adding to this as the UA is released throughout the year. So as they release the new playtest material, you can put that in here. And regardless if Fantasy Grounds keeps up with it or whatever, you'll have your own database, or so to speak. So I'm going to go ahead and start this as a new campaign. And I'm going to show it. Meaning when I ask for the structure for this, I'm going to basically give it an upload of the image so that it knows basically what type of formatting I'm looking for output. So I'll give it one of the basic built-in classes that's already in it, and it kind of gives it an idea of how the structure works in Fantasy Grounds, basically just a snapshot of the structure of the output. So it kind of has an idea of what I'm looking for in regards to copy and paste and that sort of thing. So this way you don't not only trying to describe like how you want it, but sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. So for the campaign setup, I don't need to really change anything, but I'm going to click off this show on load. I don't want this to come up every time. And I hit next. I'm going to load the 2024 core rule set until the SRD comes out. So I'm not going to worry about, copyright and all this stuff. I'm not doing any paid projects here. So I'll just go ahead and click on the core rules, which will load the monster manual, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Player's Handbook. So that's that. And then I'll hit next and finished. So what I want to do is go into, let's just go to character, because this is basically what we're going to be focusing on is backgrounds, classes, feats, skills, species, and spells. So more player facing stuff. So I want to go into classes, and these are the main classes. I'm not trying to recreate any of these classes. These are the base classes. I'm going to build off of that premise. I'm going to click on subclasses, and these are basically the main ones that come with the rule set. So I want to get something like a spellcaster, so it has all of the different features that may be required. So sometimes you have to unlock these depending on where the source is. So let's go with let's go with the Eldritch Knight, because that should have magic and everything else. So if you unlock this, or you unlock the actual subclass, you can get into it and see how it's constructed. So I want to make, let's see, that was the Eldritch Knight. So I'm going to make a copy of it, open this up, and take a look at this. And the main thing is that you're going to show this, but you also show this back tab. and that will help you understand how this works. So I'm going to take and make a screenshot of both of those, and it will kind of have an idea of the structure in Fantasy Grounds. So I'm just going to take and add those into as a project file. So I have a screenshot application called Greenshot. So I'm going to capture the region here. So just this little area, and copy this. And then I'm just going to save it as a file. I'm going to call it like Fantasy Grounds something rather. Let's see. So you won't see this part, but in the screen capture, I'm just going to be opening up the image, and then I'm going to save it as a file. So we're going to call this custom. We'll say UA, or we'll say custom subclass data in FG, in Fantasy Grounds. We'll say other tab. Okay, so that's one. And then I'll go back to the main view and take a screenshot of that so it knows kind of what I'm looking for. So capture region. So I'm just going to take the snapshot of this information here, and I'll open it in my image editor and just save it as something similar to what I had before. So custom subclass main tab. But it's Fantasy Grounds main tab. And I'm just doing this so it has some context and not just a bunch of text. Sometimes a picture helps better. So now I'm going to take those images that I made and drag and drop those into this area here. So here is the main Fantasy Grounds image for the main tab, and then for the other tab, I'll drag that in here as well. So now I have the two examples of the UA, or the Unearthed Arcana, of the SRD 5.2. Then I have a little bit of showing of the kind of data that I'm going to be copying and pasting in. And now I want to do one more, which is going to show this, which is the spell casting statement. It's very important to have this sort of, I don't necessarily need the formatted table, but I want to show it what these things look like. So again, I'm going to make a copy of this, and you could do it for every data type if you want to have more control and a little bit more consistency, but I think this will be good enough. And I'm going to open this in my image editor, and I'm going to save this as a trait or feature. We'll say feature and trait example. So this is the wording. You want all of this wording to be perfect. And that's really what's going to help with your inputting the data, is to learn the actual text structure. So feature and trait example. So I'll go ahead and export that. And then I'm going to include that image into my instruction set. You may not have to do quite as many as I am doing right now, but at least you have an idea, a rough idea of the type of stuff you might go through when you're building your own tool. Honestly, I think that's probably about enough. So that's enough for files. There's 6 there, so that's probably good enough. But I do want to include some additional URLs in here in the instructions. So I'm going to always include, or try to always include, the Fantasy Grounds Atlassian. And then I'm going to go into the rule set itself. So if you go into the Fantasy Grounds Atlassian and look at you go to the user manual, and then you scroll or kind of look down for available rule sets, and then pick the rule set. So in this case, this is going to be the 5e rule set, and I just usually provide that as guidance. So I will say use the URL provided for Fantasy Grounds guidance. And then I'll provide the URL here. So if it needs to refer to something, I'll say refer to and use the provided URL provided for Fantasy Grounds. I'll say for Fantasy Grounds content. That way it knows what I'm kind of what we're aiming for. All right, so that's that. I'm going to save that. So now we have an instruction set and we also have project files. So then what you do here is you start asking it to come up with some of these projects. So I'm going to, this is an article that just came out. This is what kind of caught my attention about the 5e Unearthed Arcana introduces 2 new subclasses and updates some favorites. So there's 2 subclasses out of 8 that are based for horror, and then the other ones are kind of like reconfigured for the new rule set. So what I'm going to do is start off with this, and then I'm going to basically say we're going to search, and then I'm going to provide this URL and create a summary and list of the new subclasses. So why I'm doing this is it's kind of giving it context. Do not include release dates, real world data, or advertising. I don't want any of that crap. All right, so we got that. And there's one of my sources for this conversation. Now, I could have put that into the permanent, the files there for the uploads or for the instruction set, but I don't need to do that in this case. So I'm just starting off with some context. Instead of just saying, build me some, subclasses, I'm going to ask it to essentially start to look at this. And it's basically, it did quote the article, which is fine. So we have College of the Moon for the Bard. It draws upon the Moonshae Isles folklore to inspire allies and hinder foes. Knowledge domain, so that's going to be updated for the esoteric lore and mental prowess for blessings of knowledge, mind magic, unfettered mind, and divine foreknowledge. So there's a knowledge cleric. Purple Knight Dragon Fighter, reimagined as a psionically bonded knight with an amethyst dragon companion. Pretty cool. Features include the Purple Dragon Companion, Dragon Rider, Rallying Surge, and Amethyst Pinnacle, and Enduring Commander. You got Oath of the Noble Genies, Paladin. So you'll have Elemental Smite, Genie Spells, Aura of Elemental Shielding, Elemental Rebuke, and Noble Scion. Winter Walker, Ranger. So maybe inspired a little bit by the previous content. What was that? Ream of the Frost Maiden, that sort of thing. So I don't know if that one's going to make it in there or not, but it looks cool. Scion of the Three. So it draws upon from the dead 3 gods, featuring Bloodthirst, Dread Allegiance, Strike Fear, Aura of Malevolence, and Dread Incarnate. So I kind of like how they've incorporated some more kind of gray area, or kind of more, I wouldn't say evil, but not so good character classes. Spellfire sorcery, so it harnesses the raw power of Spellfire, which may be from previous books. If you've read the Spellfire series, that might be kind of based on that. And then the Blade Singer, which is going to be a revised version focusing on blending swordplay and arcane magic. Pretty cool. So that's the Forgotten Realms ones from 2025, and then you have the newer ones from recently, from May. There's the Reanimator Artificer, kind of like a Frankenstein. The Hollow Warden, which is kind of like ancient forest terrors, drawing on cryptids and folklore horror archetypes. So that's a ranger archetype, which I thought was kind of strange. But College of Spirits, which is a bard that's updated to channel spirits and aid allies or curse enemies. There's the Grave Domain, which we're all kind of familiar with. There's the Phantom Rogue, the Hexblade Warlock, and the Undead Patron Warlock. So those are the different types of content. So now what I might do is say, okay, let's build one of these archetypes and then just copy and paste it into the subclass section. And I'm actually going to get rid of the Eldritch copy there. And I'd probably make my own group. So in this case, for subclasses, you would go in there and click on the plus. You'd use the drop down first, and then it makes a group 1. So I'm just going to say 2025 UA subclasses. That's basically what the title of this is. And then go ahead and hit edit again, and then I will select this as my group. So this is where I'm going to build all that. And then I'm going to probably end up doing the same for everything else. So in case you have a background or a custom background that fits with this particular build, I'm just going to do that. I'm going to do the same exact title for each one of these groups, because you never know. Most of the feats have to be hard-coded in the Fantasy Grounds. Not all of them, but the ones that change anything mechanically or such, a lot of those may not be automated. Some of them can, some can't. I don't know which ones particularly, but I know that's a thing. So there are some that are built-in, programmed into Fantasy Grounds, and then others that just take advantage of the built-in automation that's already there. So some of these, if you're going to make automation for it, you might have to go to an extension for that. But nonetheless, there's the group for that, just in case. And I kind of do this with everything. So skills, if there's going to be a custom skill, maybe. I don't think so, but you never know. So I'll make a group for that. So anything specific to this subdomain or subclass, I'm going to be putting in here under these categories. So the reason for that is so they're separated out from the main stuff. And then when you're all done with your work, you can unload the official books and then export the content as a module. And then as the next one comes out, or if you want to add more to it or make custom ones, you can go back to your work folder, update it, re-export it, and then load that module in whatever games you're playing. Depends on what you're doing. But that makes it a lot cleaner, and you don't get kind of backed into a corner or essentially write yourself into a pocket where you can't use it outside of your campaign. So that's how you kind of get around that. You can make your own specific kind of creation or your module folder or your module work campaign for developing content. That way you're not getting locked out. So then we got subclasses there. What's the other one we wanted? Spells. So click there. And again, if you have any custom spells, you can put them in here. And likely you will have some. Okay, so we have all those areas ready to go just in case we need to make those as we're building content for player-facing stuff. And just as a rule of thumb, not necessarily, the hard yes or no, but when you're creating custom UA content, even if it's official and it's not from an official source, like you're building it homebrewed style, you want to use the drag and drop character creation. That way it ensures that you actually get those features to pop up, because sometimes when you use the character wizard, if it isn't content that's actually in a purchased book or something official, it's going to be looking for that official content. And if your keywords and your the way you've set that up isn't quite something that's actually a book in like Wizards of the Coast in this case, it probably isn't going to pull that up, or it might not pull up everything. So that's why I suggest using the drag and drop method and don't use the character wizard until they work that out. I don't know if they're ever going to, but for the time being, the most of the official content works with the character wizard, but some third-party stuff and your homebrew stuff may not. So I use drag and drop for custom items instead of using the character wizard. So that's that. Then what you will do is we'll say, just for example, let's go with, I want to see this purple dragon thing, or you guys want to see a new horror thing. These are a lot newer. Let's go with the Hollow Warden. Or no, let's go with College of the Spirits. I kind of like that. So what I want to do is I'm going to give it a prompt. So create the subclass information for the Fantasy Grounds virtual tabletop platform in plain text. If there are any custom and related backgrounds or spells, etc., include those in separate sections, because I'll have to separate those out anyway, so might as well have it listed as a separate space or something like that. So let's see, separate, etc. Okay, so I'll go ahead and click that and we'll see what kind of output we're going to get. I don't know why it's searching the web. Oh, it's because I have that on. Okay, it's basically searching. It's using what I gave it as here's the format. Okay, so I'm going to ask it again. Create the actual. Yeah, I had it on search and it just kind of searched through the sources first. Text information. We'll see if it actually does it. Sometimes it will, or most of the time it will, but it's searching project files. That's good. So if you add too many project files, that's going to take a lot longer. So you got to be careful. So these are, and it tells you the source. So here's the horror subclass. Here's the actual at level 3 Jolt to Life. The Reanimator, level 3, level 7. If you would like the stat block for the Reanimated Companion, or if you'd like these imported into XML friendly format. Now, I would like that if the XML data was proper, but I don't know if it's actually going to format it according to the latest and greatest Fantasy Grounds. And I don't know enough about XML to tweak it or even have the base code of Fantasy Grounds. So I'm not even going to bother with that. I'm just going to enter it through Fantasy Grounds. If you're good with, with XML and HTML and all that, whatever it takes to get that into Fantasy Grounds through XML instead of creating a whole module, that's on you. I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but I've seen people do it. It's doable, but I don't know how it works. I've seen people hack things that go into XML and make a couple little changes. That's probably not a big deal, but building everything through XML might be a little bit tougher, especially if you don't have any examples. All right, so I'm going to say, I want to look at this. Let's see, what do we got here? I wanted to look at the actual content and see if it's going to show us. Is it right? Is it only go up to 7th because it's UA? So level 3 Hollow Warden spells. Level 3 you get Wrath of the Wild. Level 7 Hunger of the Might. So what I might want to do is go back. I want to look at the UA. I want to see, let's see if it's given me everything or not. We'll see. Okay, so yeah, so it doesn't. Subclasses. Okay, here's the reanimator. That's the artificer. College of Spirits. So level 3. Yeah, it doesn't quite look. Let me see. What is it giving me here? It looks like it's like random or something. I don't like that. So subclass. Oh, this is the Hollow Warden. Okay. So let me take a look at that. So this is the Ranger Hollow Warden. 3, 6. Okay, so level 3, level 7. See, it didn't give me level 11 or 15. Okay, let me find out. See, that's what one thing you got to watch is sometimes it won't give you everything. I would say, what about the rest? So what about the other leveled features? It's doing the reanimator and the Hollow Warden. I don't know if I wanted to do that, but that's okay. I didn't ask for the stat block. So see, these are the things that you kind of have to be careful with because it's gonna. Yeah, I don't know what it's doing here. Okay, here's the Hollow Warden. Okay, there it goes. So there's level 11, level 15. Okay. So there we go. All right, so sometimes you have to play around with it. So I'm going to say that this, I'm going to repaste it in here. I'm going to say this is the format that I prefer and not an abbreviated or partial output. And I'm going to put that in parentheses or in parentheses. Retry. Didn't like that. I think there's something going on with, there we go. Understood. Here's the full subclass text for Hollow Warden Ranger. If your preferred clean structured format, there we go. So the big key here, though, is to have the complete subclass, but also all this wording. Like your AC increases by an amount equal to your wisdom modifier, a minimum +1. Your body is visibly altered, wreathed in bark-like growths, bristles, or bone-like plates. You know, this is the sort of thing that is going to be key to helping to parse that information into Fantasy Grounds. Like, for instance, at level 7, when you gain that, it has a thing called, it says, Hungering Might. You gain a bonus to Constitution saving throws equal to your Wisdom modifier, a minimum of +1. So that's important to have that exact wording. And then we also don't need those bullet points, but I don't think that's going to import into Fantasy Grounds, so I'm not too worried about that. It'll probably skip over it. But that's the type of extra formatting that you don't want when it comes, especially NPCs. When you try to import those into Fantasy Grounds, if you've got a bunch of extraneous extra characters or anything like this weird formatting or anything, it's going to throw it off. So you don't want that. So let's see. No, I kind of want to create an image file just in case, just one image file. So I want to say, based on the context and information above. This is a kind of a common prompt that I do, especially if it's something I want to grab the mood or the theme from what I'm working on. Create a full body image. So this is important to say full body if you want head to toe. High quality, so that kind of ups the pixel count a little bit. And I'm going to say detailed, which is going to give it a lot more like texture and little bits of visual data. And detailed, high quality, a full body image, high quality, a full body, high quality, detailed, fantasy, RPG image of the hollowed ranger subclass. I'm going to say white background because I want to be able to use it in other areas. I do like having a background, but I want to have it so I can use it in other spots. So it just eliminates that extra work. With just a plain white background. That's kind of important if you want to copy and paste it and have the transparency, or if you want to use it in other places. If it's going to be a static image like a cover or something that you're only going to use once, that's one thing. But if you're going to create an image, you want to use it in multiple places. It's nice to have that actual image without all the background in it. And then the white part, you can actually just cut that out with a basic photo editing program. I use GIMP and I use Canva, and I also use Ideogram, which also will generate and take out the background. So it really kind of depends on what you're trying to do and so forth. But hopefully some of this stuff will sink in as helpful. I mean, I might be wrong on a couple things, but for the most part, most of the stuff works. I've tried it, I've tested it, practiced it. 85, 90% of the time it works. There are occasions where the wording just doesn't work out, or I run into a kind of a dead end because I realize that Fantasy Grounds needs to have it programmed, or it has to be in the actual back end, like the basically has to be hard coded in, or I have to get someone to build an extension for me. So if you're really looking for the actual automation, automatically add stuff, sometimes if it doesn't work with what's already programmed into the rule set, then you'll have to have something like that. So I don't know if I like this, but it is cool. So let's see what this says. Okay, armor class goes up. You have an unnerving aura of dread. So that's probably just growth, or part of your form. I can deal with that. That's kind of cool. Let's create another one. Let's see, using the same art style, comma, based on the context above, create a full high quality detail of a female version of the Hollowed Ranger subclass. With other features. And then plain white background. So we'll have two images. One will be for male or female. And then and kind of go from there. And you might use this when you're creating content. You want something to kind of show your players as to the type of output that they may look at, like gives them an idea of maybe what this stuff would look like. And what's kind of interesting is most of the stuff I think is basic, so I won't have to necessarily create anything like spells. Like that can be a lot of work. And then again, I don't know if there's any species or species probably wouldn't matter as much, but possibly the backgrounds. Like we might need to create a background that's going to go with this particular archetype. So it kind of depends. Why does it look like it's undead? How crazy is that? So, Hunter's Mark, you undergo a monstrous transformation that lasts for the duration of the spell. Okay, so Ancient Armor, Unnerving Aura. Okay, that's part of this level 3 feature, Wrath of the Wild. So apparently you undergo these changes when you use Hunter's Mark. Okay, so it's kind of horror-based, I see. Pretty neat. I like this one. This one turned out really cool. It's got like a staff and then a bow. Staff looks a little bit distorted, but other than that, it looks pretty cool. And part of that is because you only have so much space in here, and it tries to cram everything into this little area. So if you have wings or a bow or a long weapon, make sure you consider that in the amount of space that you're going to have, because that's why you get this distortion in most cases, because it tries to cram everything into a small area. So this thing probably went all the way to the edge, so it's probably trying to avoid that, so it kind of made this crooked so everything fits into that small area. So I don't know. I think that's, you know, something you learn, I guess, through prompting and such, and that really does come in handy to know that. Another trick I learned is if you're not getting the full image, like the full body image, even though you've said full body, mention something about their feet, like whether they're clawed or they have like boots on or something like that, and it will 99% of the time it'll render the full body, because sometimes it tries to cram in too many details that you're saying. Like if you detail the face really, like a lot of details, it's going to focus more on that than the rest of the image. So it'll possibly give you a portrait instead of the full body, or a half body portrait, because you've only described the upper half of that particular creature. So it's a less priority on the letters or the instructions or the prompt later on. So you're going to say full body, high quality, you know, that's going to be the priority. But as this goes on, it's going to take less and less of a priority. So that's kind of the other thing, is prioritize the wording as you make images. So anyways, that's kind of what I would do to create these hollow, I mean, in this case, it's the Hollow Warden, but this is the steps, right? I made a custom project file, and then there's 6 files in there and the instructions. I gave it some reference material. And then whenever I want to make subclasses, I can start new conversations within that project, or I can continue from this one. So I'd probably, if I was going to do another one, maybe I want to do the reanimator, I would probably make another conversation. That way you don't run out of iterations. And if you need to fix anything with this particular build, it won't get as confused. When you add too many variables in there, it'll start pulling that stuff and when you don't want it. So you kind of want to try to keep your conversations focused a little more. So this one, I'd probably just leave this as the ranger. So what I will do is rename this project for Hollow, I'll just say like Hollow Warden. And then I'll know. Now the nice thing is, when this stuff is gone, or when it's no longer in playtest, you'll be able to pull these up and utilize them a little easier. And if you enter them into Fantasy Grounds, it'll be easier yet. But just remember that this content is not balanced or play tested that much. So they usually wait a few months to a year to incorporate some of these. So even though you might like it, it may not be balanced, or if you don't care, at least you can go back and grab it and have it either in Fantasy Grounds or at least in Chat GPT if you want to go back and access that again. So for the images, I usually use something like Canva, and that usually cleans that up pretty quick, and I don't have to go back and keep trying to remove that background, because that can be annoying. So usually what I'll do is I'll use an Instagram 1080 by 1080 canvas, and then I'll copy and paste those images in there. So like for instance, this image, I'm just going to copy it, and then I'll go into, in this case, this is Canva. So I'm going to paste it in here, and then I'll stretch it to the extremes and try to fit it into, I might even go a little bit past just so it takes up most of the canvas space. Leave a little tiny bit of a gap here. And then there is a feature in the paid version of Canva. If you click on the image, background remover, it just takes it out. 90% of the time it does a pretty good job. So that image is now ready for export. And you notice it took away the magic part of it. So if you wanted to preserve that, you could go into this by clicking on it, and you go to edit. And then you can come in here and go to the background remover tool and sort, oops, I didn't mean to do that. So undo that, restore, turn the brush size down a little bit, and then just kind of bring a little bit of that back. So it kind of got too aggressive and took out too much. But what happens here though is you kind of get back some of that background that you wanted to take out. So you have to decide, is it worth it or not? I can always go back to this and take and fine tune it, but I think that's good. I didn't want to lose the fingers for that reason. So this is something that you'll have to decide, as you're doing this, if it's worth it or not. But this is just a kind of an idea of how you can preserve the image, but then also you don't want to erase every little single bit of it. So sometimes it's a little aggressive when it cuts the background, but that's good. So I'll just go ahead and close out of this. Now it's preserving this part, which is fine. I can go back later and cut out the rest of it. Not a big deal. Now I'm going to add another page and do the same thing. So closing that out, bringing this up, right click, copy image, go to Canva and paste this in. And it's basically the same process. Kind of stretch it so it fits that whole square, or the whole, the canvas square. And I don't want the antler or this thing all the way up to the edge. I want a little bit of a margin. But then I can also bring this down, stretch it out just a little tiny bit more, and center it. There we go. So that's pretty close. And again, I would take and click on the image, go to background remover. There you go. So that's basically how I streamline this a little bit. So when you're making content, it's a little bit faster. So we can say hollow warden _01. So we can go PC _ hollow warden _1. So this way we know it's art, or so I can say art _PC, something like that. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll just copy and paste this for the other image. And then I'll just say 2. So this is the second image. And then up here for the actual title, I would give it a whole new name for the actual project. But that's just so you can see, like, images shouldn't take forever, but they do add more complexity to your project. So coming into Fantasy Grounds, going back to Chat GPT, now you can take this information and put it in as a subclass. So you might, what I want to do though is I want it to create the summary. For the Hollow Warden for the main tab in Fantasy Grounds. So this is just going to be the basic description. So when your players go to build the character, that pops up and they can kind of read it before they actually pick this. Okay, so all I'm going to do is take this information minus this stuff here, or I could do that, but take this information, just this stuff here, go to classes and then subclasses, and then start building. So we're going to click on this green plus button down at the bottom, and it's 2024 in case you have both rule sets loaded. And then I'm going to go ahead and just Control V, Control Victor, and I might leave this stuff in here, but I don't think I need to. And then this is the base description. So when your players first drag this over onto their character sheet, this is what they're going to see. And then we're going to click this tab over here. And we want to make sure that we put Ranger as the base class. And then we're going to start putting the features in here. So you could include some of these features so that it kind of makes the players more interested in playing it. So they won't necessarily see all those options. So what we can do is take all of this information. We can even leave this stuff in here if we want, but we'll take this subclass features by level and copy and paste those down here as a kind of a second part of this. And that gives it more of a description and gives the players ideas of what they're going to get. And here we go. And then I'm just going to right click and clean up the text. And then what I want to do is you can bullet point these by highlighting the text and hitting Control 4, I believe. Yep, Control 4. That makes the bullet point. So it'll look kind of like it is in the book or in the text. And then when the players see this, they'll go, oh, okay, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to get. So this kind of just, it's up to you how much information you want to be on here. I think most people don't read anyways, but if they do, there's basically a rough idea of what they're going to get in features. So maybe they're more attracted to playing that. Now in the other tab, you would click on features and you would start building these out. So this is the subclasses up here was the subclass features. So we have level 3, Wrath of the Wild. So we'd put 3 here. And then paste that in there, Wrath of the Wild. Then you click on this little dragon or whatever, depends on the theme you have. Open that up, and then you're going to click to put the text in there. So you want to have this entire text here, the description and the wording in here. And if it can be parsed, or if it is something that Fantasy Grounds has coded into it, it will automate some of this. Some of this you might have to create effects for or your own custom thing, but in some cases it will actually pull that over if that syntax matches the rule set. So I'll go ahead and lock that feature. There we go. And then you just systematically go in and add the rest of the features. So here's level 7. So we're going to put 7 here. And this is called Hungering Might. And we're going to put that as the title of this level 7 feature. And then you're going to open up the information block in the text area, and you're going to include what this is. Clean up the text, and then I'm just going to put you can put the bullet points in there if you want. Maybe that will interfere. I didn't think about that, but that might interfere with the parsing. So I'm going to go back and fix that other one. You don't need that extraneous text in there sometimes. It might interfere with the parsing. So actually I'm going to go back to this one. Yeah, see, I didn't do it there. So I don't want to do it on the other one either. So Hungry of Magic. Yeah, no, nothing needed there. So we're just going to leave it like that. So you don't necessarily want extra formatting in there because it might throw off the parsing. So now we have a level 11 feature. Oops, we got 121. Okay, so this one is called Warden's Grasp or Warder's Grasp. Open that up and we're going to put this text in there. Right click, clean up text, and just leave it as is. No bullet points. So you may only have one creature grappled at a time. On a hit, the target is grappled. Escape equals your spell save DC, and you regain hit points equal to your wisdom modifier. So this is kind of the process, right? You're going to build based off of whatever the features are going to give you. So this, at level 15, you get Dread Apex. So we're going to type 15 into that cell. And into this cell, this is just the description. And then you want to click on the little, little symbol there, depending on what your theme is. I thought I put my pointer back up there. There we go. This might help a little. And click there. And we're going to do this again. So copy and paste the data into this area. Right click, clean it up. And there you go. So you can cast Hunter's Mark once without expending a spell slot. You regain this use when you finish a short or long rest. So these are different aspects of the character that is basically going to be used and how you're going to be. So you can cast this. So it depends on the use case too. But nonetheless, there you go. So that's pretty much. I don't know what feature choices. Yeah, new class feature choice. I don't know if any of them get that. But that's how you build the subclasses, right? So it's very similar to what you would see in an official content. So if you bring open, let's unfilter this. Let's go to the player's handbook and let's look at a Beastmaster. This is basically the description, and then the others tab, this is what you have. So if you unlock this, this is what you get. Shape spells. I don't remember if I need to include the base spells or not. So I might add that as a feature. Let me look. No, that's that. So I don't remember how, you have to make a spell list and put those in there as their starting spells. That's how you handle that. So for instance, the Hollow Warden spells. Okay, so these are always prepared. And this would be, basically under the Hollow Warden. So I would go under my subclasses. And this would be level 3. And you would build that, or not level 3, but you get that at level 3. So what I might do is put this information into the description part that I had for the UA subclass. So I might put that in here. So that way you at least have a link to it and you're not going to be digging around looking for it. Because that's kind of frustrating, especially if you're new. So what I might do is do that just to have it there. And then when your player sees that, they'll go, oh, okay, I get these spells for free, basically. It's just like bonus spells. And this is always prepared. So I put that in italics, and then that way they know what they're getting. And then what you would do is for the actual spells, you can make, basically you can make your own spell that way, or you can make a spell list. So let's see if any of these things are on the list. So we want to go with, I'm pretty sure, Wrathful Smite. So what I want to do actually is I'm going to build a subdomain, but I'm going to create another group. What I'm going to say is 2025 UA Hollow Warden. And that way it has a separate list. So you're not having to dig through everything to find it. So there's the list, or the start of the list. And then what we'll do is we'll go to the player's handbook, or we'll just hit all in this case, and we'll search for those, and then we'll drag those into the copies of them into the appropriate areas. So let's go with Wrathful Smite. Okay, so I don't see that. That's not in. Oh, I didn't spell it right. That's why. There we go. So Wrathful Smite. So I'm going to make a copy of it. That way it's not from the official book. And then I'm going to drag it and drop it into Hollow Warden. Just like that. And I'll just keep doing that systematically. So the next one is Spike Growth. Same thing. Drop this list down. Take and make a copy of this first. And then drag and drop it into the Hollow Warden spell list. So you just do this until you get all of those spells into that list. And then we got Phantom Steed as the next one. Kind of reminds me of like Sleepy Hollow kind of theme to it. Maybe like the Headless Horseman. So Phantom Steed. So again, make a copy. Take that copy and drag it into the Hollow Warden. So I'm just going to do this all the way. So there's hallucinatory terrain. So this is the process, right? You're making not only the subclass, but you're also making whatever else you need to make this a full class. So you don't. So this makes it a little bit easier when you go to create the characters. So again, Hollow Warden, and then the last one was Awaken. So we'll do, Awaken. Again, copy of it, drag and drop it into the Hollow Warden. Okay, so now when we select the Hollow Warden and we take away the filter, it should technically have all of those spells. There we go. So those are all the spells that are basically part of that. And then if you wanted to do, you don't have to do this, but though it may inherit some of those, but if you make a custom spell, you'll have to determine the level, if it's a ritual or not, the school. You'll have to actually go in and edit the actual spell. So if you click like here's the spell, you'll have to unlock that and add in all these properties. So fortunately, I didn't have any custom or new spells that aren't out yet. And some of these might be Wizards of the Coast IP, so that's why I would use the SRD, but it's not yet available in Fantasy Grounds. And then I'm going to do a check over here. I'm going to say, are any of the spells or such Wizards of the Coast IP other than the subclass itself? I want to check to see if any of these spells, let's say you wanted to release this, and you're going to have to double check too, because Chat GPT is not always right. Are any of these spells or such Wizards of the Coast IP other than the subclass itself? And let's see what it comes up with. No, the spells in the Hollow Warden subclass are all part of the SRD, which is covered under the Creative Commons. So you don't have to worry in this case about so much. You don't have to worry so much about the IP. So it's safe for use with Fantasy Grounds, Creative Commons, homebrew distribution, just not the subclass itself, unless kept as personal or unofficial fan content. Would you like the spells relisted for internal reference or export formatting? I'll say yeah. Yes. So it's kind of being helpful. It's saying, hey, do you want this list of spells kind of cleaned up? There we go. So this would be something that you can include in another, maybe you're making a PDF or something. You may include this in there. So it's kind of up to you. Let me know if you'd like this formatted Fantasy Grounds spell class list or dropped into a module builder template. I don't know what it's saying, so I'm going to say no. It's trying to be helpful, but I don't think there's such a thing. Okay, so there we go. So that was part of that. So then your next step would be, I'm going to ask, are there any backgrounds or such associated with this subclass? And if so, then we'll build the background. No, there isn't anything specific. Okay, so how would you like it if I can create a homebrew compatible horror themed background to pair thematically with the Hollow Warden? Are you interested? Yeah, we'll just see what it makes. Yes. So now it's going to make up something, but it's going to theme it or base it around what we've already created. So Bound to the Wild Grief is the name of it. You were once a hunter, a warden, or a soul drawn too close to a haunted place in the wilderness. When others fled the creeping dread in the woods, you stayed, listened, endured. Now you are a vessel of that forgotten sorrow, tethered to nature's primal fear and its endless need for guardianships. So then it lists all these. Oh, how cool. It even gives me all of the bonds, flaws, ideals. Those aren't so prevalent in 2024, but you could still use these to help build your background. So you can, well, a feature is called Echoes of the Hollow. You can always recall the general layout, dangers, and hidden paths of any wilderness you've previously explored, especially if the land is cursed, twisted, or unnatural. People from isolated or fearful communities treat you with wary respect, recognizing something grim and sacred in your presence. In these regions, you can secure shelter or rest for yourself and your companions, even if others are turned away. So it kind of gives you a kind of a role play / themed kind of feature. I don't think that's that useful, but it's still pretty cool. So if you wanted to, you could build this, and you build these tables, and they're actually formatted in a basically in the way that I would. The only thing I would change is instead of having that hyphen, I would put a pipe in there, and I'd put a pipe between the D6 and the personality. Other than that, I want to say, recreate the characteristics into a rollable list format for Fantasy Grounds. See if it knows what I'm saying. Because I've done this enough where it should kind of know. Yeah, sort of. Yeah, it's not quite. See, I didn't give it the template for that. So that's why it's not doing this. So I could give it the, base template, and that's just making a separator out of that. So you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but instead of saying, I'll say format with a pipe separator between the roll number and the I'll say and the result, and then I just give it a little nudge. For example, what I usually do is like this. This is my rollable list template in case anyone wanted to know. So pipe separator. So what I'm going to do is go title, and then 1D pound for number, and then use a separator, and then result. So this first line here is just going to be for the top, for like your title and your like your header. And then the other ones are just going to be 0, 1, and then result 1. Oops. I don't know what I did. Accidentally hit a, okay. Result 1. So it kind of has an idea of the formatting. See, this is exactly what I wanted, just like that. And then I could take these and put them in. So we have personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. Is that still part of the characters? I think it is, because you have the 5e traditional, or whatever, the basics. So I didn't want that. I want a blank sheet. Let me look at the notes. Yeah, personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws. Personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws. Yep. So that stuff's still there. So that's what that's for, in case you want those, but they don't really focus on those as much in the new rule set. They just assume you're going to make your own up, which I think is fine. That's what I usually do anyways. But I like that it did this in case you want to use it like in a traditional. I think some people are used to this. So one example, or one group here, Bound of the Wild Grief personality traits. It's a 1d6, and it says, I keep to the edges of rooms and conversations, watching, waiting. Or I speak in hushed tones as if the forest is always listening. Or I find comfort in old bones, dry leaves, and abandoned dens. So it's kind of grim, but gives you that flavor that you might be looking for, especially if you're new to role-playing games and to, in this case, 5e. So this would be something that you could build fairly quickly. Let's see what I mean by quickly here. So this isn't actually a character-facing thing, but it does tie into it. So it's under campaign, under tables. So then again, I would make a group for the UA class. So I'll say 2025 UA tables. I'll say character tables. Character creation tables. And then go from there. So then you just build those tables as you see fit. So in that group, I'll bring up the hamburger menu, which is this import. Take this stuff here. This is the header and the data. Paste it into here, and then the actual I think I want to reverse that. So I'll say personality traits, and then the title. Oops. So formatting and organization are a big deal in some cases. And I want it delimited because I'm going to say I want to separate it by the pipe symbol, and then column headers in the first row, which is this up here. I'm going to click that, and it says table ranges in the first column, which is this column here. So let's click that. Once you have that set, it usually keeps that at least per session, and then hit import. And there you go. There's your personality traits right there. And just keep repeating that. Take all the different tables. So I'll do the next one just for an example. Copy all this data here, except for the title. And then I'm going to type in ideals, space, hyphen, and then bound to the wild grief. So all those settings are still there. It looks like it's formatted properly. I go ahead and hit import. So that won't take too long to build those tables if you use the import tool. All you have to do is make sure it's separated properly here. And in this case, I'm using that pipe symbol because commas do exist quite a bit in sentence structure. Same thing with semicolons or colons. So that's why I use the pipe. And you'll see in other videos, I say the same thing pretty much. So you'd build all those, and then you could link those tables to the description of the Hollow Warden. That way, when the player pulls this up, the links to those will be there, and you won't have to dig through the entire book or the entire interface to find them. It's nice to have these things ready to go. And what I could do here is I could actually link the spells here from the list that I made, but I would actually remove these things that say copy. I'd remove that. That's just a way to kind of differentiate. I would take that copy off. Now you may leave it in there just so you have more separation, but being that I have it in a separate list, I'm hoping that it will pull from here and it will know what it's linked to if I export this module. So here's that. So I'm going to take these off. And what this does is it makes it so when your players are building a character or you're helping them build characters, you're not going to have as much grief trying to figure out where everything went. So to have this stuff linked on the description of the subclass is very helpful, and it takes less time to build a character. So now what I would do is take these spells and probably just put, instead of these descriptors here, maybe just put the links there instead. So for instance, this Wrathful Smite, maybe I'll leave that there, but I will link this here and do something like that. So it's not as painful to create characters and it doesn't take as long, because that can be annoying. So this is spike growth. And then you have this steed thing, phantom steed. And then hallucinatory terrain. And then wrathful smite or awaken in this case. So anything it takes to make your life easier. Now, if you want this to look better, you could probably take out these things here. But I like the idea that it has it by level, where these don't show the level unless you actually open the spell description. So this is going to be something I'd probably leave. I'm not going to change that, but I might make these italicized, or maybe you would bold it, whatever you need to do. But I think that works pretty well. Characters or players who are playing, when they open up this Hollow Warden, they're going to see the features they get by level. They're going to see the bonus spells or the always prepared spells, and whatever else you think. Oh, those tables that I was making, the personality or characteristics, you can link those tables here. So when they're building that character, everything is summarized on the actual the subdomain or the subclass. Instead of going through all these data fields trying to figure out where they're at, link all that work into the one page. So it's kind of like a summary of all the things that you get for that specific build. And that was what makes Fantasy Grounds powerful, is you got this ability to link things together. And it makes it much easier for you to play and to build characters when you've done stuff like that for yourself. Not all modules are created like this. You're going to find ones where it just says you have the spells, but they're just listing the spells, which isn't bad. But it'd be helpful if they actually took the link, took the time, and brought the link over so you don't have to dig through everything looking for it. It's kind of up to the person who does the conversion or the person who works on it. Not everyone understands everything about Fantasy Grounds, so they may not know to do that. And you're always going to get a little bit of variation and quality standard changes depending on who does the conversion, and you can kind of tell who actually uses the platform and who doesn't when it comes to the character or the content creation, because you can tell like there's a lot of things that could be a little better, but you're not going to get that in every case. So it's kind of up to you if you want it to be a lot more polished and more convenient. And that's just part of the way it goes. There's no instructions that tells the person who's creating this what to do. They have to adapt it with how they see it. And if they don't know the content or they're not familiar with Fantasy Grounds, they're just going to do the basics, which is the requirement, right? You got to put in all the information, but you don't necessarily have to link everything together. And that's where I think where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, is when you know the content and you kind of know what it's like to play in Fantasy Grounds. It really does help for these little nuances. And there's nothing in the necessarily in the developer notes that says you have to link this to that. There's no way to give out an instruction that says to do that, but it does give you some guidelines. If you've ever worked on Fantasy Grounds content, it does have some guidelines as to what you should be doing in regards to linking stuff together. So if you go to the developer guide and you go to there's an overview, there's product guidelines, and if you go to module data, it tells you kind of how the overview, token creation, data files. So it kind of gives you an idea of what they're looking for, but there's no specific, like, this is how you have to do it. And that's kind of a basic here. This has the best practices. It has some things to make it easier. But there isn't a way to really say, okay, you should do this, this, and that for a specific product. It's kind of up to the person creating it. It's up to their basic standards, which is the module creation overview, and how this is supposed to be created. But the developer's guide is there to kind of give people an idea of how to, kind of how to set it up, I guess. But it doesn't say, okay, you should link this spell to this area. No, it's not going to do that. It's way too much finite detail for them to be able to convey that to a person that's converting. But nonetheless, when you start playing and using Fantasy Grounds, you'll start realizing, hey, this could be a lot easier if they just link the damn thing here and don't leave it to me to do it. And sometimes I get frustrated with that, but then I realize, okay, the basics are in here, but it's up to me to customize how I want that information presented. So that's kind of where I think the confusion lies into virtual tabletops. Is there is a standard, but there isn't, and then it varies from rule set to rule set too. So it's really difficult to develop content if there isn't a standard. But this kind of has a standard, right? You have all the basic stuff, but then from module to module, from rule set to rule set, and from conversion adapter, whoever developer, that's going to vary too. So you got so many factors in there. But anyways, enough of that. I think I kind of gave you a rough idea of how to handle this type of thing when it comes to UA content. You can take the UA PDFs, you can take the SRD and that, make your own kind of tool or your own project file, and then just build from there. Then every time they release a new UA, you can upload that to the project files, and then you can start grabbing the data, and it will format it for you a little bit easier, kind of filter it out. And then also you can get the output you want depending on your familiarity with Fantasy Grounds, of course, and the rule set. So it kind of assumes you know a little bit about Fantasy Grounds and the rule set. If you don't know anything about either, this kind of stuff might be gibberish, but I try to explain it, but at the same time, you kind of have to have some of the basic fundamentals of the platform and the rule set. So I would think of this as kind of an intermediate type thing. But okay, guys, you guys have a good rest of your week. I'll see you around next time. And happy early Mother's Day to any mothers out there. And if you are so inclined, go ahead and subscribe to our channels. We're pretty much all over everything. And also you can join our, we have a Patreon, we have ways you can donate, all that kind of stuff. So it just depends on what you're doing. We also have an affiliate link. So if you buy something from the store, if you use our affiliate link, we get like 5% or something like that. But it doesn't cost you anything, but it gives the Fantasy Grounds Academy, basically me, the bump for the sale. And I think I average about yeah, no problem, Lord of Misrule. So I think I average about, I don't know, maybe $50 a year. I mean, I don't get a lot out of it. I think the most I ever made off affiliate sales was around 150, and that's when it first started. But obviously, the community's kind of cooled a little bit. So, anyways, guys, take care and have a good one. Bye-bye.